that's why I way to get started with business.
Stay with people in the country.
I'm very, very loud on the other side. I'm so sorry. Dave?
Hang on to that for another
It is incredible to have all of you here for Meet Plan Go, and we are part of tonight a national event that's happening in 17 cities across the United States and in Toronto. So this event is happening from Honolulu to New York, and there's actually one of the speakers that hosted last year is calling into several cities over Skype, which we apparently could do also, but we're not. Anyway, we're so glad that you're here. George is over there. My name is Lisa Niver, and we really appreciate you being here. We feel so grateful that all of you are interested in travel. When we're out on the road, we're always so excited to meet travelers, and it's so nice to see so many travelers here in our own city. So we are not having a PowerPoint? We are having a PowerPoint. Very quickly, because Meet Plan Go asked me to show you some slides. So, a desk is a terrible place from which to view the world. And we want to thank our national sponsors and our exclusive sponsors. Many of you met Diane on your way in. There's Intrepid brochures for you when you leave. The Intrepid, one of the ways that Diane described it to me is organized backpacking. So it is a group, but it's all people like us, so you should go. George and I, they have our eye on only 6 trips right now. And I think that you've seen Shane walking around. Not only is he in charge here in Los Angeles of Hostel International, but he is an incredible event planner. And he's joined tonight by Lucas and Dana. And yes, feed the wine, people. That's very important. Thank you. And go Mio. So go to the next one. There are several giveaways that are happening on Thursday. The reason we've been trying so hard to get your email address from you is we'd like to win all of the special trips here in Los Angeles. We do have one of the biggest events, even though our city is the first year. There are 13 cities, it's their second year. So I think there's only one more slide, possibly. Oh. You will be getting an e-goodie bag. Last year they gave things out and people threw them away and lost them, and we were trying to kill as few trees as possible. So you will get many really great things, and you'll get an email about it. And there is a class if you're interested in more information and participating with Meet Plan Go. The reason they started all of these events is because they had a class and they want you to come. So you will get a coupon and you will learn more. Now, why you're all here is not to listen to me. So tonight, first of all, we are going to have an incredible keynote speaker before an amazing panel. And I'm going to bring Richard Bangs up here. A couple things you might not know about him. He's been an explorer for more than 30 years. He's the son of a CIA officer, so be careful. He helped found Expedia.com. Again, be careful. He's authored 19 books and over 1,000 magazine articles. So now I have a new goal. Okay, it's a big goal. He's lectured at the Smithsonian. He's a pursuer of passions, and he was very recently inducted into the Whitewater Rafting Hall of Fame. Did I get that right? Close. He was one of the first people down the Yangtze, and he has 35 first descents. So many, many amazing adventures. Unfortunately, due to our technological fantasticness this evening, we will not be screening part of his new PBS special, but we will make sure to get you all that information. And Richard and I will be online together soon at Spreecast, so we'll get you all hooked in for that. So if you please give a very warm round of applause to Richard Bangs.
So one thing she didn't mention was a company I co-founded is called Mountain Travel Sobek, which is one of the oldest adventure travel companies in the country, maybe the oldest. And I have a stack of the catalogs as you exit if you want one. And I just thought I would tell, because I only have 10 minutes, a brief story about the genesis of this company. Does anybody have any idea what the name Sobek means? Good, I'm glad you don't, because it's a question that people have asked me for the last 35 or more years, why the company is named Sobek. And I started the company by accident. I was a river guide on the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon in 1969, and the rival company that I worked for got permission to make the first descent of a river in Africa called the Omo in Ethiopia for 1973 in conjunction with National Geographic. They were billing it as the river trip of the century, and they were selling seats for $10,000 a seat. My identity, my axis spun on the concept of being a river guide at that point. I loved it. It was everything to me. School was waiting. Coming back to adventure to guide was everything. And I felt I was quite accomplished at that point. So I went to the head of this rival company and I said, I want to be part of this expedition down the Omo River in Ethiopia, the first descent. And he looked at me and he said, you're a little bit on the scrawny side for this type of thing. And this was the end of the rafting season in September. And he said, why don't you come back next year and let's revisit the idea and maybe we can make it work. So I went to college, I spent the entire year working out and the shakes and everything. And I came back the following spring, walked into the office, and I was as buffed as I've ever been in my life. And walked, and he didn't recognize me, and I gave him the iron handshake and said, I want to be on this team. And he goes, wow, you look fantastic, you're in great shape, but I've decided to hire my brother instead. So that really pissed me off. So I said, well, why can't we do this? And I had no money, so I got a group of friends together, and I said, let's figure out how we can beat National Geographic and this other company down the Omo River in Ethiopia for the first descent. Well, having no money, I had this vague idea you could find sponsors, so we wrote everybody we could think of looking for monies. We got free life jackets, we got free boats, we got free raincoats, and no cash. Then I had this idea, I grew up in Washington, D.C., that the Smithsonian would sponsor expeditions. And I had read that Ethiopia has a lot of bugs. So I went to the Smithsonian, to the Department of Entomology, and I said, we're planning to go down this river that nobody's ever been down before, and there are a lot of insects there. Would you be interested in sponsoring us? And he goes, I like that idea. I think that's a great idea. Let me take it to committee. But do you have a name for your expedition? It turned out that a few days before I'd been thinking about a name for what we were going to do, and I came up with a very clever name. I called ourselves, I blurted out to him, I said, we're going to be the Raw Expedition, R-A-W. To my mind, it was clever because it stood for Reconnaissance of African Waterways. It was a play off their Heyerdahl's expedition, the Ra expedition, R-A, after the Egyptian sun god, that had just completed in failure, I'm sorry. But also the fact that at that moment in time, it was the peak of street. Everybody was running around in the Raw. At the Oscars, a guy streaked across stage. And I had just done a canoe trip down the Potomac River, a race, a race. And I came across the finish line 12th, but I came across naked. And I ended up on the front page of the Washington Post, showing all my pals. So I said, okay, we're the Raw Expedition. And he shook his head, and he put his arm around me, took me to the corner, and he said, Smithsonian cannot sponsor the Raw Expedition. You've got to find a better name. Got to lose that name, find something better. So I went to the Library of Congress, where I was researching all the ways you could die rafting a river. in Africa, and there were a lot of them. There were hippos, there were hyenas, there were lions, there were hostile locals. On this river, they had a tribe of people who took testicular trophies. There were poisonous snakes. There were riverborne diseases, schistosomiasis, elephantiasis. There were all these awful things. But the worst thing, over and over again, that all the literature cited, were the crocodiles. 175 million years old on the planet. Their instinct is predation. They are efficient killing machines. Their job, their one desire, is to eat meat. And we were going to be rowing down their river. So as I read about the crocodiles, and I had nightmares about them, and questioned my sanity, I came across a passage about Sobek, the ancient Egyptian crocodile god worshipped along the Nile River. The Egyptians paid homage to Sobek, so they had safe passage up and down the Nile. That's it. That's going to be our name. I'll call ourselves Sobek, and the god will look kindly upon us. I neglected to read a further passage that said the way to achieve this homage was with human sacrifice. That was different. So I came back to the Smithsonian and I said, we've got a name, we're going to call ourselves Sobek after the crocodile god. He thought it was a great idea. He said, that's perfect, I'll take it to committee, we're all set. But as a matter of fact, I have a colleague who studies reptiles and knows crocodiles very well. Let me introduce you to him. So we went down the hall and he told me all about crocodiles, which was very helpful. But one of the things he said was that if you're traveling down a river in Africa that is peopled with crocodiles, you have to be as quiet as you can. They have fixed focus eyesight. They can only see things clearly at 30 feet. So if you slowly drive by with no noise, the likelihood is you will survive. This was great advice, although we'd have a very quiet trip. And then he said, and I have a colleague over at the National Zoo who's been studying crocodiles for almost as long as me. Why don't you go visit him as well? So I did. And the next day I went over to the National Zoo and met with the crocodile expert there. And he said, listen, I've been studying crocodiles all my adult life. I've been to Africa many times. There's only one way to float down an African river and survive, and that's to be as loud as you possibly can. Make as much noise as possible. But he said, there's one noise you do not want to make. And he took me into his office and he had one of those giant loop-to-loop tape machines. And he said, listen to the sound. It's the sound of a baby croc in trouble. And when that sound is made, it attracts every crocodile, large crocodile around to come and save the baby. So whatever you do, don't make the sound. Played the sound, it sounded exactly like my partner's, John Yost, his laugh. Exactly. So I knew it was going to be a somber trip. And sure enough, we got on the river and I stayed away from John's boat. And one time I got in John's boat, we were 13 or 14 or 15 days down the river, I cracked a joke. And sure enough, a crocodile came and actually bit our boat. Which we captured on film. So, but that's a different story. So I went back to the Smithsonian when all this was done, and I said, well, we're ready to go. How much money can we expect from the Smithsonian? And he said, well, money. When we sponsor, we give you collecting nets and vials, and if you find a new insect, you can name it after you. So, no money. So by hook and crook, we were able to finagle our way over to Ethiopia, to Africa. Back then they had bucket shops, and you could sign up with an affinity group to be part of a charter flight that was supposedly a legitimate one, but they could predate whoever you are. I became a rugby player to join this plane full of fake rugby players, and got over to Africa for $150. As we added up with my friends what it cost us to go down the Omo River, 26-day trip or whatever it is, in Ethiopia, the first descent, we took lots of photos. It cost us a total of $600. including transportation to and from America. At the end of it, we got back to DC, and I marched into Geographic, and I said, I've got some photos from the first descent of the Omo. And they were aghast, and they called everybody, they rang the fire bells, and all the editors assembled in this big conference room, and we put the slides up. They didn't believe that we had actually been there, but we showed them piece by piece by piece the first descent of this river. And then at the end of it, I thought, wow, they're just going to be so happy and embrace me. And, instead, the editor-in-chief escorted me to the door out the front, and I never heard from him again. So, but the good thing is that we started the company Sobek, which is thriving today and goes to all 7 continents and almost every country in the world and does almost every adventure activity. And I invite you to pick up a catalog on the way out, and if there are any questions later, then please feel free to ask. So, thank you.
Thank you. We are going to do a brief reset, I think, right now to get ready for our panel.
Hello, Los Angeles. How are you? Well, I did not want Richard to stop talking. What an amazing life. Oh my gosh. We are going to bring Richard back up for the question and answer period at the end of our panel discussion. So we will have a chance to talk more with Richard. But right now, we have 5 amazing panelists. They are absolutely living the dream, our dream. In the audience, please tell me how many of you first have already been to some Meet, Plan, Go events? How many of you, this is your first time at a Meet, Plan, Go event? Wow, that's great. And how many of you are in the process of planning or dreaming about quitting your job to go take a career break? Excellent. That's what we're here to talk about tonight. So let's talk to these amazing panelists who have already done this and are continuing to make travel a part of their lifestyle. I briefly want to introduce you to them, and then we're going to go straight to their stories and resources and tips. Just to my right, we have Jacob Frank, and Jacob and Doris Gallan left their corporate jobs, sold their house, sold their possessions, and hit the road. And they are recently back from 5 years of travel. Not only did they go around the world once, but they did it twice. They went to every single continent and 50 countries. Is that right? 50 plus countries. So we have Jacob Frank and Doris Gallan. Thank you for coming tonight. On their right, we have Michelle Page. Michelle worked for 25 years as an assistant film editor for some very popular movies. I believe it was a Spider-Man page. It was just one of them, all 3 of them. And she took off for her travel. She's traveled extensively through Asia. And her project, which you can hear more about tonight and afterwards, is she is saving a specific type of artist lifestyle in Nepal. What she is doing is she is saving the art of making signboards, specifically for dogs, right, Michelle?
Yes.
And she will tell us more about that later. Michelle likes doing slow travel and can talk extensively about that as well. We're going to tap into her brain and her wisdom tonight. On her right, we have Sarah Gottlieb. Sarah and her husband, Gabe, they were planning on working abroad for a year. What an amazing idea that is. Not just 2 weeks vacation, 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Let's go head abroad for a whole year. Well, that quickly turned to, why work abroad for a year? Why not travel for a year? So Sarah and Gabe hit the road and they were traveling all over. She also went to, I think it went to 19 countries, was it, Sarah? 19 countries, 4 continents, traveled all over the place, and Sarah is going to tell us all about how they prepared for that and planned for it and made that happen. And on her right, we have Lisa Napoli. Lisa was very high-end journalist for many, many years with some of the biggest names reporting for the New York Times and MSNBC and Marketplace Online. And her other life, what she decided to do was to start up a youth radio program in Bhutan. And she wrote...
I was asked to start a radio station.
Oh, you were asked to start a radio station.
It found me. I didn't.
It found you. Oh, I was under the impression that they found you. Fantastic. And she wrote her a memoir about that called Radio Shangri-La. And so Lisa is going to share with us her experience with changing that kind of a lifestyle, and especially what she's doing for her next project, building a library in Bhutan now. And so whatever, I think we are selling books tonight. Doris is selling books, and Michelle is selling her books as well. And we'll be doing, and Richard is selling some books, and we will be putting, I think some of those proceeds are going to help the library project in Bhutan. So we encourage you after the program to come up and get the books and the projects signed by our guests. Okay, so let's get started. Gumption. Everybody loves the idea of traveling and taking off, but how do you actually make it a reality? Doris, can you tell us who came up with the idea to sell the house and quit the jobs and sell everything and get lost?
Well, in our relationship, is it on? Can you hear me? No.
Must be the wire.
Oh, the wire.
Try here.
How about now? No. Yes, we have a wire problem here.
Hello? No, off for me too.
There we go.
I turned it off.
Back on?
And we turned it off.
No, the other one.
And how about it? Okay, leave it on mic. Am I seeing that?
Now you can hear me, yes. Okay, whose great idea was it? Well, Jacob and I had discussed traveling around the world for our 25th wedding anniversary, which was 2 years into the future. I was burnt out at my job and needed to change jobs, but I was so burnt out I didn't have the energy to look for a job. And I just needed a big, big change. So I convinced Jacob that maybe we could start the 25th wedding anniversary trip a little early. And so we started planning it and figured that it would still count as a wedding anniversary trip as long as we stayed on the trip until our 25th anniversary. So we actually celebrated our 25th anniversary the last week of the trip, which was in Tahiti. So we spent 2 years traveling around the world, 42 countries in 26 months, and that was the first time around the world. I'll tell you about the rest later. Okay, well, the second trip around the world was after this continuous traveling around the world, we decided to come back to the U.S. During a recession wasn't such a great idea. And so Jacob became certified as a teacher of English language, and I'm a writer, so I can work anywhere. And we then lived in Mexico, Costa Rica, and China for another 3 years. That's how we stretched our 2-year trip into 5 years of living around the world.
Okay, but how long did it take from, okay, we're going to go on this trip, to we need to sell the house and everything else? How did it become an all-encompassing thing?
Well, every day that I came home saying I'm not going to make it till 2 years into the future, then it became 1 year into the future, then 6 months. I mean, I was so burnt out. I really needed to get out of my job. So I kept moving it sooner and sooner and sooner. So finally, I think the whole thing maybe took 3 or 4 months. And that included selling the house, getting the house ready for sale, selling the house. Mind you, this was 2006. Apparently it was the last year and even the last month of the boom. Thank goodness. We sold it in 3 days. It was like, you know, it's not this market, right? It was the best time we could have sold it. But people still thought we were nuts to be leaving because everybody knew the bust was coming, the recession was, you know, around the corner. We'd never be able to re-enter the market, both real estate and the job market. And we just, who cares, we're going, we need to get out of here.
That's the answer we wanted to hear. But not everybody can do that. Not everybody can just quit and uproot their whole lives. We want to make sure that you are encouraged to know that this can happen on a smaller scale. It doesn't have to be, you know, forever and ever, amen. So Sarah, now I want to hear your story about how you left for 1 year. And did that mean you had to quit your job? Did you have to quit your job to take a career break for 1 year? And how did you make that happen?
Sure. Initially, like Jen was saying, we were going to work abroad. It got to a point where we thought, well, what's the fun of that? You know, we really want to travel, so why don't we find a way to travel for a year? The way we did it was I did have to quit my job, and I took the risk that when I came back, it could take up to 6 months. That was my estimate to get a new job. My husband was able to take a sabbatical. That gave us a little bit of a safety net because his company said to him, okay, we'll give you 6 months to, you know, get this out of your system. So we had a little bit of a safety net where if something didn't work out in 6 months, we could just run back home and, you know, pick up where we left off. As it turned out, we were in Buenos Aires calling his boss and saying, thank you so much for the opportunity, but we're going to stay on the road. So for us, it did take about a year to save up the money. There were two kind of parts of it that were difficult, the logistics and then sort of the mental preparation. Logistically, we just found a budget. We did a lot of research online. We used oneworld.com, which I'm not being paid to say. I love it. It's the most fantastic round-the-world ticket planning tool, and we were on that every night plotting our every move. So those things, the logistics, came easily once we knew how much we had to save and what we would do. And then the mental part of it was more difficult. We had to make a lot of decisions when we were preparing to leave for a year. What if something happened to somebody in our family? Insurance, or, you know, would we be able to get back if something happened? Those questions were a little bit more difficult for us to make or to approximate in making our decision if we would go or not. We had to be okay being out of the U.S. for a year, and that was a big decision for us to make, to be apart from our family for a whole year, which when you're close to your family can be a difficult thing. So.
Thanks, Sarah. I can't wait to hear the discussion on the other end of it, because we're also later in the program going to talk about the cultural challenges of coming home. So I can't wait to hear what they have to say about that. Next, Lisa. Please tell us a little bit about the lifestyle change for you. At what point were you in your career when you got asked to come over and do the radio show in Bhutan, and what that lifestyle change was like for you?
I was working a very fast-paced life as a journalist. I've been doing that for about 25 years, and I was in my early 40s. And my situation is completely different than the people so far. I wasn't as brave as they are. I knew I was going crazy and that I couldn't keep doing what I was doing, but I also didn't really know how to get unstuck, and I wasn't as creative either. It didn't occur to me that I could quit. And all of a sudden, I met a cute guy at a cocktail party. And the cute guy at the cocktail party was very cute, and he was much more adventurous. He was a tea importer, and he basically said that he was going to Bhutan. Did I want to go? And I didn't know where Bhutan was. I just knew it was in Asia somewhere, and that it was gross national happiness, and didn't have TV, and that sounded okay by me. And a few weeks later, he invited me to go help start a public radio station because I was working for Marketplace, the public radio show. And I went to my boss and I said, look, I am in my early 40s, I'm single, I am not going to take maternity leave. Everybody else I worked with, even single ladies, were taking maternity, actually men were taking paternity leave. And I figured I'm going to ask for a leave to go start a radio station in this little kingdom. And lucky for me, he knew where Bhutan was. He had dated a woman years before who had gone there, and plus he's a good journalist. He wanted free stories from an exotic place, and so he let me go. So I left a very, very fast track, high energy, type A personality place that I couldn't stand any longer, even though it was a quote-unquote dream job, to go to this place where I really knew very little what I was stepping into. I knew it was a Buddhist kingdom, last Shangri-La, no TV. It was the first radio station to start there outside of one small commercial station. I just knew it was different, and it's sort of, like I say, completely different than these folks because I had no planning. This guy said, come. I said, I'll go. I bought a plane ticket, and off I went, and I really didn't know what I was stepping into. And the truth is, it was completely, nothing could be more radically different than 405 Wilshire Boulevard, rush hour, and even the lovely India's oven. I was just, it was completely the opposite, which is just what I needed at that moment in time. So it can happen by accident, too, although I think what these people do is much more interesting.
I think often we find that our adventures find us.
Yes.
And that travels call to us in one way or another. I'm already sold on the book. And now that I know that there's a cute boy, at least in the beginning of it, that's even more exciting. So what about trips and travels that are being planned right now? Michelle, you're planning a trip to Mali, is that right?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you're preparing for that and how long it's taking to make it a reality?
I'm not a planner. I kind of, that's one of the reasons I go by the seat of my pants. I don't plan on anything. I just go and find what it is. I do love reading all kinds of travel journals and memoirs and literature and things. But last year we went to South Africa, and we've been there before, and we fully planned to go to Botswana, because we'd gone to Namibia once before when we were in South Africa and loved it. But we travel so slowly that even 3 months in South Africa, we never even got anywhere close to Botswana or even out of the Western Cape. But we like to stay where we are. We like to meet people. We like to get to be friends with the locals. We like to go into their homes and, bring them bottles of wine and dine with people. I'm not a planner at all. I'm completely different from any of that.
So when do you think you'll get to Mali? Is it a chore to save up the money, or is it timing? Is it work related? What's keeping you from going tomorrow?
Well, what's keeping me is because I'm in Nepal for 4 months a year, 2 different trips, and then in 2010 we went to South Africa for 2 months. I was gone 6 months, and I need to be here in order to promote my business in Nepal. So there's Mali, and then of course we want to go back to South Africa, to Argentina. My trouble is I've got too many places to go and not enough time. But I'm not a planner. I could pick up and go somewhere in 4 hours from now and not have a problem. So
there's that F word again.
Yes, flexible.
So when you're planning this career break, one of the questions that might come up are budget versus destination. Which comes first? Do you have a certain amount of money and then you figure out how far it'll stretch? Or do you talk about the dream trip that you've always wanted and figure out a way to make it work within your means? So let's talk about that a little bit right now. What comes first, budget or destination? This is an open question to the panel, but we're going to start with Doris? Jacob. Jacob.
I think you start with your goal. Start with what you want to do, and then cut back if you need to. When we were planning our trip, each of us made a list of the countries that we wanted to go to, the countries we'd like to go to, and the places that we did not want to go to. We put our list together, and I think our first pass at it had us at about a 3.5-year trip. And we started out thinking it was 1 year. And so we just scaled back based on time and money. But I think you should definitely start with what you want to do and then figure out a way to do it.
The reason for your trip is not to save money, it's actually to see places. So like Jacob says, start with your destination. Where is it you want to go? So plan on that and then figure out how to get there. Figure out how much money you're going to need. And if it's a lot of money, figure out ways to do it cheaper. There's tons of ways to save money, to travel cheaper so that you can go to your destination, no matter what that destination is. And like us, we had like Jacob says, we had a 3-year trip. If we'd gone everywhere we wanted to during our first round the world trip, we would have been 3.5 years on the road. But time and money did limit us. But we still went to Antarctica because that was really high on our list. We went to all South America. We spent a lot of time on the road, obviously 26 months. So really look at your destination, then figure out the money to make it happen.
I do look at budget. I don't like to spend $50 for a hotel room. That would drive me crazy. $30 is on the high side for me. And I'm not comfortable doing that, but having said that, I like Africa, I like Asia, and there's parts of Africa that are more expensive, and there's certain parts of Asia. But I look at the budget first, and always have. My first trip was in 1980. My first real big trip was my 22nd birthday present to myself was a trip to Paris. And I did make that work. I arrived there, I didn't speak French, I didn't know anybody, I had $325 and no ticket home, and I had a great year. Of course,
a year on $300?
Well, I did end up working. I'm a very good typist, je fais de la dactyl. I did learn how, I could spell, which they didn't have spell check in those days, so I was very valuable to that. I did, a little bit of modeling here and there. I was a maid. Anything you can do. Budget is very important to me. I left home the day I turned 18, and I have every penny I have, I've made myself, or with my husband, but we both worked hard for it. And I'm going to Europe, but the next time I go, I'm going to be pretty old because I won't be able to travel in Asia or Africa anymore, or South America.
Sarah, with 1 year, I think both destination and budget play a big role, if not equal. Tell us about your...
Yeah, and we were concerned. We didn't want to feel like we had to count up every single thing we spent money on so that we could stay on budget. We didn't really want to have to think about money a lot traveling. So we thought that we would come up with the same dollar amount per day. And when that money was out, it was out. Which is great when you're in India. We were like Maharanis and Maharajas living in India. We had very nice accommodations and great food, and not so great when you're in Western Europe. So that's just a trade-off that we made through the glories of Facebook. We had friends of friends who let us use their couches in Europe, actually in South America as well, and we just made it work that way. That was the easiest mental way, I think, was just to have that certain fixed amount and not to worry about it. And we ate out of grocery stores a lot in Spain. And like I said, we ate well in other places.
If you want.
Yeah, I again am in a different sort of situation. Everywhere I've gone accidentally. I went accidentally to Africa because someone couldn't go on a press junket once. I've been to Europe a bunch because I was covering a story there. I met a whole network of people who kept inviting me back and kept staying on my couch. If you know about Servas, if anybody here is familiar with that, I'm an inveterate couch surfer, just trading of my home, or not even officially trading, just welcoming people into my home, and in return they'll invite me back. And Servas is a more formalized way of doing that. When I went to Bhutan, the deal was I paid my way and they paid for my expenses while I was there. Having never been to Asia before, I didn't understand how cheap expenses were there and how expensive the plane ticket was. But I had just been very fortunate because I had sold a piece of real estate before the bust and had some cash, and it was that letting go process. It was saying to yourself, you know what? Yeah, it's $2,000 that I've got in the bank, and everything I've learned over my last 40-something years is to save money, save money. I'm from a very poor family. $2,000 is a lot of money, but it also seemed like a once-in-a-lifetime chance that someone was going to trade that kind of opportunity for me. So I think it's just back to the flexible word, staying open, seeing who you meet, and seeing what looks important to you. And I think actually the best things happen most cheaply. You know, you can write a big check and go stay at the Ritz. It's not nearly as interesting as going to the grocery store and being with real people in a real place. That's far more nourishing, and the whole point of going to travel, of course, you go to Las Vegas. Yeah, that's true.
All right, watch it. I'm a big Vegas fan.
Sorry.
I love
Vegas too.
You can travel cheaply in Vegas, but it's true. I ran out of money in Bulgaria and was taken into a home in just a tenement building and sleeping on the floor, and it led to a really amazing Orthodox Easter out in the village where their grandparents lived, with a 100-year-old church where they didn't even have enough money to have chairs, and people just circled this old church in Vieco Tarnovo with candles. Celebrating Orthodox Easter was amazing. I'm not encouraging you to run out of money, but have different ways of spending money while you're out there, so you're not just necessarily waiting for a Western Union transfer.
I just want to say one other thing. For anybody out there who's a solo traveler, and I meet a lot of women who are afraid to go or feel worried about going someplace, I actually find, and this is true for men too, you can see the place you go much more interestingly, to make up a word, than you can if you're with someone. No offense to traveling with someone you love, and that's a wonderful thing, but when you go by yourself, people are very open and they'll give you things. They'll welcome you differently than you would if you were 2 or 3 or 4 people. So that's something very important to keep in mind.
I agree. So when we're talking about money and we're talking about traveling, there are also ways that you can earn money while you're on the road. So Jacob, you worked as an English teacher, right, in China? So tell us a little bit about how you prepared for that. Was it a job that you just got while you were in China, or were you planning ahead and got your certification ahead of time?
I got my certification ahead of time. It's actually fairly easy. In most places in the Americas, you can get a course for 4 weeks to get certified. If you want to teach in China, most motivation, you need to have at least that certificate, and you cannot get a job by going there.
How long does it take, and how much do you have to invest?
The course
Certification.
Most of the courses are 1 month, 4 weeks, and my recollection is it was around $1,000. And this was 3 years ago, so it's probably changed. And that was in Costa Rica. You'll find courses like this throughout Latin America. Most of the schools that teach English also have a program to teach teaching English. That's one of the ways they make their money, and they get teachers. If you want to live and work in Latin America, you just have to show up, have your certificate, you show up and you can get a job, because it's usually under the table. Whereas in China and Japan, Korea, Vietnam, it's very formal because you have to get a visa. And in China, that process takes a couple months. And yeah, you cannot be in the country. So that takes a little more planning. But then again, it also pays better.
I think everybody has to look at their situation differently if they're working. I mean, I got a work visa to work in Australia, I think right around when I was 30. I think 30 or 31 was the cutoff. And I got the work visa, and it must have cost me about $500 or $600 US. And afterwards, I realized that the money that I had made from the little marketing job that I got while I was there, because you can only work for a limited amount of time, so by the time you find the job and then you get going on it, the amount of money that I had made there in Australia, in Australian dollars, wasn't as much as if I had just waited a few more months with the job that I had had in the US and just saved that money. I could have taken, if I had, instead of spending the $500 or $600, I had just worked a little while longer and took that $600, I could have been traveling in Australia instead of working there. So just think about your situation and how it's different for everybody, but I love the idea of getting the tools ahead of time so that you can look for the job and choose a destination. So should you be flexible enough to stay longer, you can. Michelle, you have made traveling a lifestyle, not just an occasion. So tell us a little bit about how you're able to do that through your various projects.
Well, I've always been very good at saving money, but I went from being an assistant film editor, making a good union wage, you know, straight time maybe $35 an hour, to $3 an hour. And I work longer, well, about the same. But it's so much more fun, and I've always loved hiring people. So I got this idea. My job disappeared, film assisting, just simply because people don't print film anymore. And my other options were to become an avid assistant or video assistant. But that's 14 hours a day in a dark room staring at a computer. And with no, you know, the film assistant was actually aerobic. You know, you're winding film and you're doing stuff and carrying stuff across a lot. And I liked it a lot better. Well, I decided that the signboard artists in Nepal were also losing their livelihoods, and their work was completely disappearing and being replaced by the same thing, digital, plastic, or computer-generated art. And so all these fabulous hand-painted artists weren't getting any more work. So I decided I would start the Danger Dogs project. And everyone said to me, oh, it's such a brilliant idea, but anyone could do it. I said, okay, you guys can take over that job. You find somebody who wants a painting of their pet from a signboard painter in Nepal. That's the hard part. But you know what? I've never been happier in my life. I've now started writing magazine articles. I've written books. I'm asked to speak on panels. My hair has even stopped going gray. I actually had gray hair when I was assistant film editor, and now I don't anymore. I'm happier. It's, you know, I set my own hours, and when I say I make $3 an hour, a lot of that is going off to art galleries and finding people that want to buy Danger Dogs. So it's pleasant work. Yeah.
Okay, so now this is going to be our last topic, and then we will open the question up to the floor. Coming home. Sometimes the culture shock isn't when you get to the new destination or the new country, but it's after you've been away and you're returning home and you're seeing what was your home before, you're seeing it through different eyes because you've changed. Sarah, I know you and Gabe have recently come back from your abroad. Can you tell us a little bit about what life is like being back now?
So I should preface this by saying I spent a lot of time in India and South America and Eastern Europe. So a lot of the places I was in, my elbows were up and out, and I had to really fight, you know. Eastern Europe isn't like that, but a lot of people, you have to watch your back. When I came back, a woman held the door open for me, and I forgot my American polite niceties and didn't say thank you, and she said, well, you're welcome. and I thought, wow, I've forgotten how to interact. I don't know how to talk about the weather anymore. I don't know how to mention all these things that we do. Please, thank you, you know. I was polite when necessary, but not overly polite. So it's taken a little bit of time for me to get my politeness back, which I was surprised by. Another thing that I didn't know about, you know, I did a lot of research and talked to a lot of people before we left and when we were traveling. The adrenaline rush was something I didn't expect to deal with coming back. When you're traveling, you just, I think, naturally have this sort of adrenaline high. You know, you're in a new place. You guys are all nodding your heads. You're in new places constantly. You're always doing new things. You're walking a lot. Everything you do is brand new. You're meeting challenges that are scary. You're on the world's scariest road, and you didn't realize you'd be on the world's scariest road for 8 hours. You're seeing anacondas in a river you're swimming in. You're doing all these new things, and whether they're just walking on a new street or swimming with a crocodile, you have adrenaline. And I would say that this is something to be aware of because it took me about 6 months to calm down coming back to LA, and LA is not the best place to calm down. So that was something that I was unprepared for and I hadn't heard about. I guess another fear that I had was that I wouldn't be ready to calm down and settle down again, and I was. I finally, for once in my life, do not feel a travel bug urging me to hop on a plane and go somewhere. I'm sure that'll come back in another 6 months, but right now I'm very happy to stay here. And then the other thing that you might be interested in is that it did take me 6 months to find a job. That was something that we considered could be a possibility. We were hoping the U.S. would not be in a recession when we returned, but it did take a while, so I spent more time than I wanted to at my in-laws' house. But we're now on our own again, and I'm working and loving it, and a lot of the experience that I had traveling has really helped me to be more competitive in the job environment. And I'm actually working with one of my Spanish tutors who is tutoring me in Argentina, and now she's creating a freelance pool of Spanish writers for part of my job currently that I'm managing. So it did open up new avenues, and solidifying my Spanish was great, and it's helped me to be a better employee back in LA.
Great, thank you, sir. I'll pass the mic to Doris. Doris, 5 years is a long time. Was there anything you missed about the United States? And
Peanut butter.
And otherwise, peanut butter for Sarah. Was there anything that you missed, and what was it like coming back for you?
Okay, what did I miss about the United States? Ice cream. Miss ice cream, especially living in very warm countries, and China ice cream's a fairly new thing, so it was rare that you could get ice cream. And when you did, the ice cream container would be so caked in ice, and sometimes I'd still buy it and bring it home knowing it would be awful, and of course it was awful, but it was still ice cream. So that's probably what I missed the most. What else? Clean air, especially in China. You think LA is bad. Go to China and see how clean LA is. Coming back was after 5 years was fairly difficult. I mean, we came back a couple of times during those 5 years to see family and friends, and so it was good to come back and drive a car because we hadn't driven much in the 5 years we were away, and so that was kind of fun driving a car again. It's like you almost feel like you're starting anew as a kid. The choice in grocery stores is phenomenal. I mean, you stand in front of a yogurt display. I mean, it goes from over there to over there. And like in China, you had 6 inches wide, and you had 1 or 2 things of yogurt. That was it. And here it's like I couldn't believe how many types of yogurt there was. And I knew this. I mean, intellectually, I knew this from before. But there's so much choice in grocery stores. I mean, it really paralyzes you when you come back and you just don't want to go grocery shopping because it's such a big deal. It's intimidating. Yeah, it's actually a lot of work to go grocery shopping because you have too much choice. While in other countries, you don't have anywhere near this kind of choice. And so that was a really big deal. But we're happy to be back home. It's so much easier when somebody says hello on the street. It doesn't mean they're aiming it at you. Like in China, if anybody saw us, because we lived in a small town of only 7 million people, and there were very, very few Laowai, foreigners. So when somebody said hello, you could bet they were coming to you saying, hello, hello. They just want to talk in English to someone, right? But here people say hello and they don't even mean you. So it's kind of fun. I mean, it was nice getting back. We've been back since February, but we've been traveling so much around the US and Canada that we actually only got an apartment less than 2 months ago. So we've only now been settled, and we actually bought furniture and a car and all sorts of stuff for an apartment. And one day after about 3 weeks, we said, maybe we should go grocery shopping, because we hadn't actually gone a whole week's worth of grocery yet, because we just hadn't gotten through our minds that we were settling, we were staying here.
So, but it's been nice to be home again.
I think I just got back from living a year in London, where they speak the same language, and it's not drastically different, but you'd be shocked at how different it is. And I have a funny story like Sarah did about coming back, but the shopping, wherever you go, no matter which country you are, you can be prepared for transportation to be different, but grocery shopping, I just never gave a thought to it, and it is so different. But the one funny story that I wanted to share about coming back was we came back from London and we were staying in a pretty nice hotel in San Diego for the first 9 days. We'd gotten a deal on Jet Setter, and so we were coming back, staying at a nice hotel. We hadn't been driving in London, and so we got our car from storage, and I was driving my daughter to the hotel, and I pull up to this nice hotel in La Jolla, and the man comes to my door, and I just look at him and I say, "Where would you like me to park this thing?" And he says, "Ma'am, we have valet here." I felt like such an idiot. Valet, oh yes, forgot about valet. But yes, coming home is different for everybody, and Lisa is doing an amazing thing on a weekly basis, not even on a monthly basis, but on a weekly basis. Lisa, please tell us about your weekly ritual that you've started about coming home.
Oh, well, I actually started that ritual before I went on this trip. I'm big about building community, especially in these crazy big cities where we live. And when I moved here, I was single and starting a new job. I was 40 when I got here, and I began a Friday night party. And so every Friday I have a party at my place in downtown Los Angeles. And I did it even when I was living in Bhutan, on and off over the last 4 years while I was writing this book. And actually, anywhere I am on a Friday night, I convene people. It's sort of like my own version of a Sabbath. And I encourage all of you, if you don't have rituals that put you in touch with other people on a regular basis, I can't say enough about how nourishing it is to invite total strangers and people you know really well into your home every week just to have a very casual meal and conversation. It's a really great way to build a community. We need to do it here. And just to answer your other question about what it's like to return back, I just wanted to say real briefly that for me, coming back from Bhutan each time, but particularly that first time, it was a reminder of how small this great, big, beautiful planet is and how connected we all are. Even if people live radically differently, they want the same things that you do: love, connection, belonging, sense of purpose and family. Even if they're poor, whether they're rich or poor, everybody wants the same thing. And I feel very fortunate to have been born in this country, daughter of immigrants. A lot of people want to come to this country, which you find when you travel, and it's a good reminder how fortunate we are to be here, as much as we have the wanderlust that we have to see how other people live in the world. But it's one big, great, big, beautiful world.
That's a great point. Thank you, Lisa. Richard, if we could bring you back up, we now have the question and answer period. But because we have this one mic, I think what I want to try and do is you can raise your hands if you have a question to ask the panelists and Richard, and I will see how it goes by you staying in your seat, to ask the question, and I will repeat it on the mic if I can hear it.
I had a question about the English teaching certification. Did you get that? Do you have to? Is there any continuing education? Does it ever expire? Could you get it and use it like one summer and then again 10 years later?
The question is about getting certified to teach English. Does the certification expire?
No, and there's no international body that regulates certification of English teachers as a foreign language. There's a couple of groups. One is TEFL, Teaching English as a Foreign Language, which will certify schools and allow them to teach and issue certificates. Cambridge and Oxford both have programs. They're obviously top of the line. But I've run into people who have taken courses at kind of Joe's English school. It's sad, but as long as you have some kind of certificate, you can probably get a job.
Right here, this table.
When you're going to a lot of places, you know, like you guys did quite a few countries in a year, and then you did a lot of countries in 2 years. Do you ever get to a point where, when you're transitioning so often, that things lose their novelty, or is it always exciting? Or
The question is, when you're traveling to so many different destinations, sort of rapid fire, does the novelty ever wear off?
The novelty can wear off, but mostly because you're so tired sometimes. So what we would do is plan an easy country every once in a while, or a bit of a resort-ish break. And so we'd find an area that was really nice, like Thailand. You can go to places where it's more resort-ish for maybe a week and do nothing, lay on the beach, and for fairly cheap. I mean, they have hostels and sleep in hammocks and stuff, like really cheap. And so we do that to just get a complete rest so that we could start up again. Because sometimes it does get to be so much that you stop absorbing, you stop enjoying, and I mean, you can tell you're just getting really, yeah, it's just another temple, just another monkey, just another giraffe. It's like, seriously, it's like, you just can't help it. When you're doing this too much, you go, okay, like this is time for a break. And as much as possible, you try to have breaks. Like Hong Kong doesn't sound like a break to most people, but when you've been in countries where there's no English at all, Hong Kong has some English, and it's a big city, yeah, and it's like not quiet or anything, but it's so much easier because it's so westernized. That's like China light, right? So before going to China, you do China light to get used to it, because it's a bit of a break. So yeah, you need to plan it, especially because we were traveling for such a long time. You need to plan in some breaks where you do nothing, because you do get sensory overload.
Now, we had another panelist that talked about planning in a vacation from your vacation.
Yes.
Yes, who was that? Was it Michelle or Sarah? Did you also, Lisa? No? Oh, maybe it was you, Doris, that we talked about.
I did too. I emailed you.
Yeah, planning a vacation. Well, let's not forget, before I choose the next question, we have Richard here. Does anybody have a question for Richard Banks? Besides, can I have a job? Anybody else? Any river rafters out there? Any river explorers? Daniel, your question?
Well, I wondered what he recommended as the best way for funds in foreign countries. Is it ATM cards? Is it debit cards? Credit cards? Traveler's checks? Carrying cash?
That's a great question. Very good, practical question. Richard, do you want to speak to that, or should we let the panel do it?
I think the panel would do it.
Okay. One of the questions, the question was just asked was about money. What kind of money do you carry when you're traveling to a bunch of different destinations? Is it traveler's checks, debit cards, credit cards, cash? Sarah? No? Don't know?
They just
Well, we did some research on this, and Charles Schwab was our favorite checking account because they don't charge for ATM withdrawals. So we use Charles Schwab for checking, and then Capital One, recently, or in the past 10 years, I think, credit cards started charging you a fee when you're abroad and you use a credit card. And I think Capital One is the only one that I found. I don't know if you guys have different.
The other ones usually do too. They charge you like a 1% transaction.
Transaction fee. It's kind of hidden, and you wouldn't know it unless you're traveling a lot. But our card, Capital One, did not charge us that transaction fee, so that saved us a lot of money over the course of the year. And then, yeah, we would just pull cash and spend that.
I actually still carry traveler's checks, but I have to admit that I got $1,000 worth of traveler's checks about 10 years ago, and I still have some. But they're nice to have in, $20 increments for, I like a little bit of all of them.
Traveler's checks can pose a problem, though. It's okay in cities, but certainly in smaller towns and villages, they're really hard to cash. ATMs, we started using ATMs like in '83, first time when we went to Europe, and, 93, sorry. And ATMs are great almost everywhere. The only place where there may not be a lot of ATMs are smaller villages in Africa, but usually you could do a bit of research and find out whether or not you have access to them. And credit cards are our second best way to, I would say, and especially the American Express Gold. If you can afford it, it's really worth it when you're traveling, because anything you buy on it, if something happens, like we had a computer stolen, a laptop, it was replaced, 100%. Like it's great insurance to have for cameras and laptops and such when you're traveling, because you're insured that way through your credit card.
Okay, we'll take one more question. Anybody really, really want their question answered? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, my question about health while traveling. Did you guys get travel insurance? Did you ever have to use it? How was that? And if you ever had to go to a hospital in a country that didn't speak English, how was navigating that?
The question is about health and navigating health issues while you're traveling abroad. And I just have one anecdote to share with this, and then Doris will tell you about her book of tips. I had a friend get in a bus accident in Laos and nearly died, and she was stitched up on the side of the road and then taken in a back of a truck. She actually wrote a book about it, Allison Wright, Learning to Breathe, and she was driven 13, 14, 15 hours in the back of a pickup truck to the Thai border so that she could go get surgery over there. And she could not be medevaced back to San Francisco because she didn't have the appropriate insurance. And I think if she had had the plus version of AAA, so when you get your AAA card for your roadside emergencies, when you get a flat tire, whatever you call AAA, they have a plus version that includes medevac, or they did 10 years ago. I would look into it again. Look into the plus version for medevac in these very, very extreme situations when you might need it most.
Well, there's also HTH, which is $179 for a year's worth of travel insurance for two people, and we're old, kind of. So I definitely recommend getting that. And
what does it stand for?
HTH,
health insurance?
Travel, I don't know, HTH. But it's really valuable. The once we did buy one in Mexico, we bought one right in San Diego border. It was great because I broke my tooth in South Africa, in Cape Town. I went to this doctor, and it was $325 for the Cape crown and whatever. It was a great dentist. And then when I got back, because it was in Rand, so it was 335,000 Rand or something like that, 350 Rand, 3,500. And they wrote to me and they said, well, we're sorry, we can only pay you $500. I forget the name of that company, but I go back to it.
That's good. What's your best?
I'll tell a quick health story, even though it has no relevance to anyone, because unless you go to Bhutan and happen to have my friend who took me, does anyone know what loose motion is? It's disgusting. I had terrible, terrible, terrible stomach issues. You must have had it at some point somewhere. And I thought I wanted to die, and someone took me to the Royal Tepu Hospital, and because I was a guest, they felt so badly that I was suffering that they just gave me all sorts of Cipro and treated me really nicely. But I had worried before I had gone what would happen, of course, with diligent American. Where's my health insurance? And healthcare in Bhutan is free, and especially when you're volunteering there, they're particularly nice. Yeah. So that's that.
We did, whatever the cheap travel insurance was, but the funny thing about getting sick abroad is that usually it's cheaper. You go to the hospital and you pay, and the amount that you pay is cheaper than your copay. So I do recommend insurance. It's good. At least my mom slept better. But the one time I needed to use it, the expense at the hospital was a joke, and I got really great care. So.
That's actually true too. I had a problem in Kathmandu, and I went to this wonderful acupuncturist. I was recommended by 4 different groups of people from all over Kathmandu. Didn't know each other. They said this woman was fantastic. I got acupuncture, muscle stim, massage and consultation, it was less than $5. That was the first trip. Next time I went back, it was only $3 because I didn't have the medical consultation. And they, in five treatments, they got rid of my sciatica. So.
Sounds great. Well, the program is not quite finished, but I want to take this time right now to thank our panelists, Jacob, Doris, Michelle, Sarah, and Lisa. Thank you very much for your insight and your input. I want to let you know that they are going to be, Doris is going to be up at the table signing and selling the Boomer's Guide to Going Abroad. And Michelle will be selling her Danger Dogs book about her sign art in Nepal. And there are also a number of handouts up by the front door. But before you all get up and rush over there for those books and your resource pages, we want to bring up, Lisa and George Reina. To thank them for this splendid evening, but to share with you this award that they received. The City of Los Angeles has given them. No, because then I have to read it. The City of Los Angeles has gratefully awarded them the Certificate of Appreciation to Lisa and George Reina. We said go travel, and this is for their efforts. On behalf of the citizens of Council District 11, this certificate is presented to you for your ongoing commitment and dedication to provide community and leadership in Los Angeles. Your efforts help to build connections in our city and to other countries as well as our neighbors. Through your ongoing programs, you have enhanced and changed the lives of many, and I join with other members of our community to applaud your involvement to building a brighter future for everyone. And this is from Bill Rosendahl, council member for the 11th District. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you. So we really appreciate all of you being here. Like we said before, there's a bunch of upcoming programs, and in your brochure, can I borrow your brochure? We put something just before you get up. If you just think for a minute, it says lessons for and from the road. For your head, what I heard. For your heart, what I felt. And for your feet, what I will do. Because it is true, if you write something down and you tell someone else, it's very, very likely to happen. George had a dream to go away for a year that he invited me on, and it was an incredible experience. And you've heard about some amazing experiences, and we hope that we'll see you again. It is fantastic to have so many travelers all in one room. So again, at the door, Diane is here from Intrepid, Shane and Lucas, and Dana are here from Hosteling International. You have an incredible group here, so many great resources here in Los Angeles, and we hope that you enjoy this evening, and we hope that we'll see you again soon. And George and I we said go travel. So thank you, have a great night.